Hi, I'm Gillett Cox, and what I'm known for is making stuff up. Many years ago, I developed a way of working using coloured inks, and I made work like this. Beautiful, loose, floral stuff, and I made the video that you're about to see about these techniques. So I no longer work with inks because they got too hard to get, and there was some problems with just sourcing what I needed. And so I've switched over, and now I do those same techniques using glossing, which is another thing I made up. And there is glossing in another video that's on this channel, which is about painting Australian native flowers, and I gloss in that one. So that's really good for you to watch. But this one also contains some lovely little nuggets of information about all the secrets of how I paint. I still use most of the same things. I'm just using different products now. So enjoy it, and I hope you manage to find some things that help you be the best artist you can be, grow as quickly as you can. And if you want some more support from me with that, you can join my Patreon, or you can join me at Mastrius for mentoring. It's much more one-on-one at Mastrius, and I can help you. I can help you be the best painter you can be. So enjoy this little blast from the past, and I'll see you hopefully on Patreon or on Mastrius. Okay, bye.
Hello, I'm Gillett. I've been working up this technique of using ink on canvas for more than a decade now. It's a self-developed technique, and it's taken me down lots of wrong paths, but lots of right ones too. It's pretty exciting, and I think you're going to enjoy learning it. It's all about building some dam walls and then flooding those dam walls, the textured surface of that, with the coloured inks, these Art Spectrum inks here. This particular technique of dam walls is a good place to start. If you haven't worked with ink before, it'll give you all the basics of making it happen and understanding what happens, how you have to stand by and let the colour happen and not be the boss of everything. You're going to need to be very patient because there's lots of drying times. You're going to have to let go a little bit, stand aside and let it happen. What do you think? Are you feeling brave? This, if you think of it like wetting wet watercolour, but a whole lot more extreme, that should put you in pretty much the right mind space. Let's get brave. You're going to need a bunch of stuff. You'll need some sandwich bags, just ordinary clip lock kind of bags. Don't worry about the ones with a gusset in the bottom of it. They won't do the job for you. They'll just get stuff everywhere. You don't want that. You're going to want some Art Spectrum inks. We've got a range of colours here. There's two different kinds. There is Art Spectrum pigmented ink, and there is also Art Spectrum liquid spectrum ink, which is in a smaller bottle. Art Spectrum tells me that they're essentially the same product, except that this one is the school grade one. It has more water in it, but they have the same light fastness, the same strength of colour. I like to use the liquid spectrums because they come in a bigger range of colour, and I'm just an absolute tart for colour of all descriptions. We'll talk more about how many colours you need later. You will need some doilies. If you can go to your local op shop, and don't tell the ladies you're going to be cutting them up, because they probably won't sell them to you if you let them in on that. You'll be needing some palette knives. A few different sizes is a really useful thing to do. You'll be needing some brushes. I'm a big fan of the fan brush, mainly because They do all kinds of things for me, nice surprising marks. They help me get out of my own way, which is an important thing. You'll be needing some single muslin, also cheesecloth. You can just get it from Lincraft or Spotlight, any of those stores. You'll be needing some yarn, so any kind of wool or crochet cotton. The one made out of bamboo works really well. We're going to be using that around a ruler to make a fringe, but I'm sorry, I'm just going to be mysterious about that right now. A little bit more muslin right there. You will need some texture paste. You will need some gesso. This is in Pastel Gel Medium, and this one is also in Pastel Gel Medium. That's because this one I've watered down so that it'll do different things for me and I can use it for glue. Some china dishes are fabulous. Good to have white ones so that you can see what kind of colour you're getting. You'll need a few syringes. You don't need the needle part, obviously, just the barrel. Some scissors, some masking tape, an image to play with, and some blank white paper to make some viewfinders with. A bucket's always a handy thing. Now, every artist worth their salt is perfectly well aware that if you have some red, some yellow, some blue, and black and white, you can make every single colour known to man. Yeah, that's the story, but honestly, in this world of ours, if you can have quinacridone magenta and cobalt turquoise light and red gold, why would you not? I mean, honestly, there's enough boring people out there. Let's go to town. It's about colour. Did I mention I'm a total tart for colour? Here's some evidence of that. All right, I think that's everything we're going to need. So, okay, moving on. I love it when the studio fairies clean up all my mess for me. Awesome. Okay, we're going to be working with canvas. Now, you might be tempted to work on board. Probably not a good idea. We do depend upon the canvas having the give so that we can depress it at different points and also support it from underneath. We're trying to control the way that the ink flows, which, you know, we might or might not be successful with. The canvases with 38mm stretcher bar are great because we are asking a whole lot of our canvas. Really good to get a sturdy one with these stronger stretcher bars on it. And that's about it. You could get a linen one if you wanted to. They're nice and strong, but the canvas ones are great too. Sorry, the cotton ones, they're all canvas, aren't they? You've got a budget to consider, we all do. So whatever works for your budget, but try and get a sturdy one. They're nice and strong. Right, let's talk about the image that you're going to use as the basis for your painting. It should be all about colour and movement because that's what inks do well. If you decide, for instance, to do maybe a picture of a building, not so hot. If you do birds in flight, that's great. If you do a dancer, excellent. All kinds of things are about colour and movement. You can source your photographic reference from anywhere you like, so long as you're not making money and selling your paintings. However, you should understand copyright if you're going to be selling your paintings, so make sure you do. You want to respect other artists. Photographers are artists too. So, troll the net, take wonderful photos yourself, whatever you like, but think about colour and movement and have that be the most important thing that makes your decision for you about which image you're going to do. Fish are great because you've got all that colour and, guess, all that movement too. Colour and movement. Have I said that enough, do you think? Okay, cool. I need to tell you about a highly technical tool that we use. It's called paper viewfinders, and all you need is 2 sheets of A4 photocopy paper. And what I'm doing is cutting 2 L shapes, you know, like the letter L. So I have my L's and I will use them to decide which part of the image I'm going to crop out. So we need to play with our viewfinders now and figure out exactly what it is that we want to catch about this piece. I'm just using masking tape. But what we can do with the viewfinders is move them around. Let's say I had a square canvas, which I don't, but let's say I had a square canvas. We could decide that that was the important part of the image. We could change it around, change the angles. I don't have a square canvas at all, so we'll come back into the rectangular format of this canvas that I actually do have and make it work. Figure out where is the most important part. So I'm thinking I like that. And I like that. Decision made. It's good that I'm making my own decisions right now about what's the important part, because you don't want the original photographer to have made all those decisions. Every chance you get to bring your voice in, bring your voice in. It's an important thing. Okay, now a word about drawing on your canvas, which doesn't need to be gessoed as it comes out of the packet. We'll be doing that later. If you have one that's already gessoed, that's okay too. It's not critical. I like to draw with willow charcoal because basically if I make a mistake I can get it off. If you draw with compressed charcoal, it's not that easy. Charcoal comes in long sticks, but if you use the long stick, you're going to be using your writing grip, which is not good. You need to break it so that you can use a drawing grip and use the big muscles of your elbow and your shoulder to make a drawing happen. Now, with my viewfinders, I'll just reinforce the corners so I remember exactly where I am. And I'll just look for halfway too, so that I get the idea of where these birds are going to fit. First thing I notice is this thrust line that goes all along the length of that bird. So if I find about halfway here, that gives me that point. And if I come down more or less to there, it gives me the line that that bird is going to sit on. So I can look then for the basic shapes and rough him in. Don't need a whole lot of detail at this point. I'm just locating the major elements. Pretty happy with where the birds are. It's always so good if I can draw well while you're watching. Okay, that's about all I need for the moment. That's enough drawing for me to get to the exciting bit, which is all about gluing things down next. Moving right along. Now that we have located everything more or less where it needs to be, We're going to start thinking about the textures we have to build, and a good place to start is with gluing down. We're going to use some impasto gel medium to glue things down with. We've mixed it with water to about the consistency of cream. You want it pretty thin for this to work. If you were going to glue down some shells or sand or something heavier, you'd want less water in it. What we have to glue down is some doilies cut into pieces. Really good to get from op shops, or you can buy machine-made ones now from cheap shops as well. We have this gear here that I think is called eyelash. You get it from fabric stores and anywhere that does knitting type stuff. We've got some yarn which I'm going to use to make some gum blossoms with, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Highly technical, as is most of what I do. All of this stuff, the important thing is that it's somewhat porous. Porous things like fabrics are much more successful than plasticky things that don't absorb any glue, because you can always peel them out of the glue, that they just don't stick that well. So I've got what we need. Oh, not to forget the single muslin. So this is just also available from fabric shops. You buy it by the metre, it's cheap as. Sometimes it's called cheesecloth as well. So we've got what we need. Time to get chopping. For this picture, we're going to need some flowers, and there's a few ways to get them. One way is if you're lucky enough to find a doily that's got some flowers already in it, and you can chop it so that you can use some of those flowers. But you need to be conscious that symmetry is never, ever your friend. Well, you know. Maybe it is when you're driving. It's not when you're making art. You also want to avoid, where you can, any solid edges like this, or any really regular shapes. So I have a nice irregular shape with some flowers. We can use a doily like this too, to just steal some flowers out of. So that's pretty easy to do flowers like that. Another way we can do it is to make something like this. Now, it looks a bit like a pom-pom, kind of. Maybe a pom-pom that's been run over. I've used this highly technical tool here to make it. So all you do is, this is a ruler underneath here, just a plastic ruler, and it's wrapped up in kitchen baking paper so that glue won't stick to it. I've got some yarn, and all you do is wrap it around and around and around and around and around and around, and meanwhile you try not to die of boredom, and you try and keep pushing it up so that you get it nice and thick. So you just keep going. When you've done the whole ruler, see this cunning device I have here that enables it to stand up, and then I get some of my impasto gel medium glue and paint it just along one edge, all the way down of course, because you know we're doing the whole here's one I prepared earlier trick. When that's dry, what you'll need to do is grab a craft knife and cut it unevenly, so that what you end up with is a shape where it has some long strands of fringe and some short strands of fringe. And you can imagine by the time we curl that around, break it down into little lengths of, about what, 4 centimetres? We'll be able to make that into some fairly convincing gum blossoms. So that's another way to do it. So that's some prep that you can do, because this glue here will take most of a day to dry. So something to be organised with. Okay, so I've got muslin here, and I want to get rid of the hard edge first and cut myself just some diamond shapes. I'm going to be making some leaves with this. It's not critical what the shape is, just so long as it has a little bit of stretch in it one way or the other. So if you cut diamonds, it's always going to have Now the procedure is to decide where your leaf is going, and if you wanted to, you know, you could give yourself a guide, but I think I'll just wing it. I've done this a couple times before. So some watered down impasto gel medium down on your canvas. Get that down on there. And then put some more of this goo until it's all nice and wet. Don't worry about going too far outside the edges of everything. And then what I'll do is pull the edges of this to create the mid vein of the leaf. I've managed to make that piece of muslin too long. I think I'll put it on sideways. So I'll just turn it around. That looks better. Okay, we'll do that again, shall we? So pull it to create a mid vein and the points, and then you pull in the rest of the edges to start to make the leaf. So there's one. Really good to have a damp chucks cloth here because it's a messy business. So here's some, this is just muslin that I cut up earlier. So same thing, I'd like another leaf there. I'll drop that on there, fill it up with goo. The point of filling it up is because you really want the glue to stop this fabric absorbing ink later on. So grab it, pull it and twist it to create the mid vein, and then pull the edges in. If you don't like your fingers in the glue, you could use one of these rubber tip tools to push it in instead, but I'm a mucky pup, I'm a fan of fingers myself. That smooth down is just to make sure I haven't got any large lumps of air trapped in there. So that's a way of making leaves, and you can pull them around and give them a lovely, elegant movement. When you're finished with any particular area, grab your impasto brush and wipe it fairly clean, and then come in here and make sure that the marks that are left in the impasto gel medium work with your design rather than against it. You don't want a big mess all the way around it, and these little marks will show up. Every thread and every brush stroke will show up. Going to start establishing some more visual weight at the bottom of the painting by gluing down some flowers in this part. It's good to start with the flatter bits first because, well, it makes sense to not be gluing over mountains if you can glue over molehills instead. So once again, some goo down on the surface, and then put your piece of doily or whatever you're using down in here and saturate it with your diluted impasto gel medium. You really want it full because otherwise it's going to suck up ink like nobody's business later on, and that's never the right answer. So trying to think about placement, trying to resist my brain's natural inclination, which is to go, oh, there's a gap, I'll put one right there. That's not what you want. What you'll end up with is some wallpaper in that case. You need to make interesting clusters of things. So those two can sit there. Now here's a piece of the fringing that I made earlier wrapped around the ruler. I can start to build this in here. You always want the short side sitting on top because otherwise, if I did it this way, the short stuff would be buried underneath and it would have been a waste of effort. So bed it down in the glue and then once again saturate it. I'm sure you're starting to get the impression that this will take a fair while to dry, and you're right. Not quite wet enough in the middle there. I've still got a lot of air resisting me. That feels better. So that's how to start building up all those blossoms. I've got this lovely piece of doily too with some flowers in it already. I might bring some of that in, but I'm thinking it'll work better elsewhere in the painting as hanging down clusters of flowers. But because I think I'll do that, I'll put some of that same texture off the doily down in this bottom area too, just to make sure that the textures are echoed throughout the painting. It's one of the ways to get unity in things is to echo colours or textures or shapes. It's all about rhythm and harmony. I'll use some more of this fringing up here at the top of the bottle brush because it's pretty much the same as a gum blossom really. And if I did it all the way down, it would be way too chunky. So I'll just push it in there so that I can get this shape that I want at the top. Lots of glue. If you don't saturate it well enough with glue, what will happen later on when you're flooding this whole thing with ink is that the ink will pool underneath. That'll waste a whole lot of ink. And also what will happen, you'll think it's dry and you'll stand it up to admire your masterpiece, and then there'll be this awful run of ink comes out from under somewhere and ruins stuff. And we don't want that, do we? We have to be the good example, not the cautionary tale, as aforementioned. So that can be the top of the bottle brush right there. That feels nice and sloppy. And then I'll build this up with another process, but we're not there yet. Doilies are good for more than just flowers. We can use them also to indicate the feathers on the breast of the lorikeet. They make great fish scales too, but there's not a lot of fish up in the Australian bush in the trees, so we're just going to do the feather thing this time. I'm seeing that the shape of this particular doily will lend itself very nicely to the whole area of the bird that comes across the breast here. So I'm looking at this part of the bird right here. I've strengthened my charcoal line so that I can see it through the doily. So that I can bring it on here and cut it. And that's going to fill pretty nicely, I think. Those holes aren't ideal, but I can sort them out later. So once again, some goo underneath. Don't worry about this charcoal mixing in with the impasto gel medium, it doesn't matter at all. And again, really saturate it. And then, as always, that final step, remember to tidy up your lines outside so that they work with you and with the shape of the bird rather than against what you're doing. Gluing down fabrics is one way to get textures. We've done some of that and I'm going to leave that alone now, and it's been allowed to dry. We've allowed the magic of television to do its little work for us. So we're going to go on to the next bit, which is using texture paste. texture paste is very similar to what we've used before in the impasto gel medium. However, it has some calcite grit added to it. It means it'll dry faster, and it means it has some tooth to it, which means it will accept paint, which probably doesn't matter to you right now, but it will later on. So we're going to need a very highly technical tool to do our piping with, a sandwich bag. We're going to be using this like an icing bag, but before we get to that point, we will need to know where the lines are going to go. So I'll use a little bit of willow charcoal to draw up the bird in a bit more detail. I like to use willow charcoal because it comes off basically. When I make a mistake, I can just rub it off with a bit of paper towel, or more usually the back of my hand, but we won't talk about me being a mucky pup. I'm sure you'll see lots of evidence of that as we move through this process. Probably good if I remember to give him some feet. You can't just do things standing in long grass, people. It's a pathetic excuse. You have to learn to draw feet. Good too if I remember that this branch sits across in front of the bird. Okay, that's things near enough to where I need them. So, back to our sandwich bag. What we need to do is put about 2 tablespoons of texture paste in here. When you're working with acrylics, put your lids on quickly and dump your tools in a bucket of water. That will save having horrible messes to clean up later. So, get all the air that you can out of this bag, and do make well sure it's sealed. Now, if we were to just cut the corner off this bag straight across there, what we would have would be a slit, and that would let a ribbon of texture paste flop out of there and go all over the place. It'd drive you nuts. So what I'll do instead is turn the bag, twist it a little bit so that this side seam is here and it comes down right into the middle of that point. And then I'll cut it off. You want a little tiny, tiny hole. So that square hole that I just created will give me a square bead of texture paste, and it won't misbehave the way a ribbon would. Now in piping, I'll make sure that I tuck this part of the bag right up into my hand so that it doesn't drag around in everything that I've just so carefully done and muck it all up. And there's a few things you need to go into with piping. There's ways you need to understand that the texture paste will behave. So I have my piping bag and I'm ready to show you what not to do. If you pipe really quickly, you'll end up with breaks in the lines as you do them. That's not so much the plan. If you pipe too slowly and you're putting some pressure on this bag, you'll get, well, I didn't then, did I? You'll get some squiggles, I promise, it'll happen. Like that. You don't want squiggles either. The good thing about texture paste is when you make muck-ups, you can just take them straight back off. So what you want to do, I'll just, working in this blank area that I'll be filling up with other textures later, let's say you had a line like that to follow. What you do is touch the bag down to start it, and then you're squeezing a little bit and you're lifting that line so that you can see the texture paste falling down onto the line. Not quite like that, but that happens. Just take off the bit that went west and start your line again. Let it overlap just a little bit. And then touch down again to finish the line. It's really, really important that you have that height in what you're doing, because I'll show you what happens if you don't. If you don't have any height, what will happen is you're too close to the line and all the shake in your hand will be transferred into that line. Wow, I didn't even try and do that badly, but look how awful it is. So, you need height and you need to be working at the appropriate speed for what you're doing. Now for this bottle brush flower, what I want to do is make sure that each little line that I'm creating has a blob on the end of it to indicate the pollen. So, and I'm also starting down this end so that when I move up here, lines will be overlapping in the right way. So it's just touch it down to start it and then bring it in and again. So you're making lots of lines. You'll get quite fast at this. You'll see I'm using both my hands to support the bag. That's important. Well, it is for me. I find I'm pretty hopeless at piping across in front of myself, but if I go away or go to myself, it works really well. You too will become a master of piping, I feel quite sure. So I'll end up building this whole flower, but that's fairly boring to watch, so I'll show you some other more interesting things. I think I'll put a few more little leaf shapes in here. So I could draw them first with charcoal if I wanted to, but I think I'll just wing it. So I'm sure you get the general idea with that kind of thing. Something I might do too is on these muslin leaves, I might just give them a central vein to pull them together. I might even give them a branch to sit on. Why? Because I'm just that generous. And a few little side veins too. So you get the picture. You're building up some interesting stuff. One thing that you can do is have a highly technical tool like a comb. It's just a piece of ice cream container lid, really. And you can use that to manipulate textures too. So I could, for instance, use that. If I didn't feel like piping all of this individually, I could just lay down a whole bunch of texture paste there. And make some marks like that in it. It's only the high points that will come up through your inked result at the end. So don't be too particular about it. You want your lines to be smooth. You want it to all be balanced. So you're probably got your head around composition and just making it a beautiful picture. Don't be stressing too much about the quality of the texture paste. And remember, your best friend, the palette knife, because if you make a mistake, you can just make it go away and you can give it another crack. Moving on to our friend the Lorikeet. Now here it's going to be important that the lines will contain the colour, contain the ink when we put it on. Now ink wants to go wherever it wants to go, so we have to make sure that the dam walls that we're building are going to contain it. So It's all about joining up your lines properly. So if I start to pipe this beak and bring the line around, I need to make sure when I bring this line around that I don't leave a gap where I start and I don't leave a gap where this comes down either. So I've made sure that that overlapped, I've made sure that they connected, because otherwise if I fill that up with red ink later on, because it's a red beak, it's going to look like he's bleeding to death. This is not a good look for Australiana as a general rule. So to make sure it's bedded down well, try not to get your thumb in that stuff when you do that. I'll repair that in a minute. Watch the tail of the bag. Honestly, the traps in this, they're everywhere. Making sure it connects, always. Now that crocheted edge won't contain colour either, so I need to make sure I come all the way down. And I'm here at a foot, so I'll show you some foot tricks. It's nice to just come in and wiggle your way across and end with a claw. Now here, there's a hole in that doily, so I'll just mimic the texture and fill it. Because, well, not only do we not want bleeding beaks, but we don't want any bullet wounds in the lorikeet itself. Not over the branch. So a great way to do branch texture is to draw yourself lots of squares. So I'm coming in here and drawing squares that fill up this area of the branch. So I'll do one here where you can actually see what I'm doing. So it's this kind of square, 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 square. That kind of thing. But that's not a branch, so I better get rid of it. Might have tricked myself up here. There we go. So that's the idea. You keep going, you keep building your damn walls, making sure that you're separating things like a blue head from a red beak, and it might be nice if I keep ink out of his eye as well. You can expect this to take a long time and be kind of tedious by the time you're done with. I always think that inking is hours and hours of tedious preparation, followed by 15 minutes of pure terror when the ink goes on, but we're not up to that exciting bit yet. You are going to have to be very, very patient while I get on with this. And now for some more gluing down. You're going to need to draw really strongly, a strong charcoal line where you need to cut this doily to shape, otherwise you won't see where you're going. If you're really having trouble with it, perhaps you could paint that area of the canvas a strong colour so that you can see that through the doily as well, but usually near enough is good enough. You can always stretch it to shape a little bit. It is crochet after all, they're fairly forgiving things. Get rid of all those fluffy bits, blow them out of the way. Now you're using diluted impasto gel medium. So blob down some of that goo and push the doily onto there, and then fill up your brush with more impasto gel medium and really fill up that surface. You're trying to make it so that it's not porous anymore for when the ink goes on, And the only way to do that is to fill it up with impasto gel medium. It needs to stay flexible, because canvas moves with the weather. Never mind what we're going to be doing with it. That's going to move it for sure. And then fill up your edges. Make them full of impasto gel medium and smooth them out. Now we've got a bottle brush going on there. So again, glue down first. And then that's the fringing that we made early before. You need to stick it down and then really fill it up with impasto gel medium. You can see there, by dripping off the brush, how thick it needs to be. It's about like cream, really. It really has to be full. There's a couple of layers there of yarn, so you need to fill it right up. And then, of course, all your marks around the edge are going to have to work for you. So be careful of the way you're working your brush. It'll move things around. Tidy up the edges, give it another push. You're the boss, remember. It's only glue, string. You can make it into art. You're the boss. I think I'll put some of the fine doily in here. Cut off that edge, it's in the way. I like the fineness of this particular one, and I like the fact that it's got ready-made flowers on it. That's a bit of a cheat. When you're buying doilies, try and stick away from the really thick woolly ones. It's nice to have a variety of textures in your canvas. Muslin is fine, and this kind of doily is fine. And the really thick woolly ones, just maybe if you were working on a really big scale, they could work. But I just find them a bit sort of clunky and obvious. We'll have a bit more of that same doily, I think. It's always good to have the selvages cut off and to have cut irregular shapes out of the doily. It makes them scream, "I'm a doily," a little bit less. Because really, you want it to be saying, "I'm a native Australian flower." If you happen to be an Australian artist, of course, you may not be. But you want it to be loose. Here's the top of another bottle brush. So the same thing. Glue down first. I hope you don't mind having glue all over your fingers. You could wear gloves, I suppose. And really fill it up. It's the only way you're going to force it to stay where you want it to be. And the only way you'll stop it soaking up ink later on. And then tidy it up again. This corner needs a few more leaves, I think. It's a bit empty. Glue down first, then your muslin, your square of muslin, well, square-ish. Then grab it on two corners and stretch that diagonal out. That's how you create the mid-vein of the leaves. I'll show you again, look. Glue it down, stretch it out to find that mid-vein, and then push in the edges there to find the rest of the leaf. And give it a nice graceful tip on the end of it. I've left a big gap between them, didn't really mean to do that. Muslin down, grab those corners and stretch it out. Oh, stretched it too far, I'll just put it back. Oh, all right, you can be part of that leaf. Be fluid, be adaptable. And here's another one. You can see how varied those muslin shapes are. I say they're muslin squares, but they're not so much, they're just muslin. push that down so that there's not a big lump of air trapped underneath it. And clean up those mucky bits. That's better. All your marks have to work with you rather than against you. Nearly there, but that corner's still a bit empty. Oh, that's a nice leaf. Good. Now this bottle brush is going to be buds rather than an open flower. So I've got some of this fringed knitting yarn. I think it might be called eyelash, but you just knit woolly jumpers with it. You can buy it at any shop that sells knitting things. Those fringes are going to show up in the ink. Even one little line will show up. So that'll be a background for when I pipe the buds on top of it. It'll be some of those wispy, flowery bits. Not a lot happening up here. Bit of a big empty space, so I think I might do some more leaves here as well. I suppose making leaves is a bit like drawing. You just need to do lots and lots of practice. Kind of useful that some leaves get chewed by insects, because that's my excuse for why some of them look a bit dodgier than others. You know how we're all taught to colour between the lines? Well, this is probably one way out of thinking that that tight control is really important. This is helping you to let go, this kind of gluing down and looseness, but boy, you're going to have to be way relaxed later on when we put some ink on top of this. Clean up those edges. Make sure that every mark is working with you, not against you. I won't do all of the leaves with muslin. I'm leaving some spaces here and there to just pipe some leaves. I like that contrast of a clean piped edge against the texture of having a glued down piece of muslin. Oh, that's pretty. I like that. And tidy up those edges again. Make sure everything's working for you. Now, we'll finish the rest of this piping. Get some texture paste and put it in one of these clip lock sandwich bags. You don't want the sandwich bags with the gusset in the bottom. They're not good. And the little teeny tiny ones, they don't work either. The sandwich sized ones. Put that lid on, because the last thing you ever want is crunchy little dried bits of texture paste in your bags. You'll squeeze it harder to get that blockage out, and the next minute it will explode. Now here's the trick. Push some texture paste down into that corner and then twist the bag so you can see that seam right up the middle. See it there? Now get your scissors and chop the teeniest, tiniest little corner that you can off there. And that's the hole that the texture paste will be coming out of. We're going to build up all the things that we didn't build up with glued down stuff with this texture paste. What you're doing is creating shapes and dam walls that will more or less hold the ink where you put it. There's always going to be some overspray. It's always going to just do things you don't expect, but this is our nod to pretending that we're in control of the willful mistress of ink. The texture paste will lose about 1/3 of its volume as it dries. So it'll probably look a little bit clunky when you're doing this, and that's alright, it'll calm down a bit. Just try and make these marks to start to indicate feathers in here, little short broken marks. This kind of squared off mark is pretty good for on tree branches and things like that. It holds little tiny islands of ink and it just can look really good. Now I'll echo the texture of the doily by doing those little scaly marks there on the bird's leg. Now touch that line of texture paste down to start, squeeze it a bit, and then lift your bag so that the line of texture paste is falling down onto your charcoal line. It means you'll be enough out of your own way to see where the line is, and having height in the line of texture paste will take some of the shake out of your hand as well. If you're too close, the bag just makes a nasty flat little mess of texture paste, and you want a dam wall. You're trying really hard to make a line that'll make it stay where you put it. The ink, I mean. Texture paste won't go anywhere. Just put some feathers here. Always respect the way that feathers grow. Sometimes you need an awful lot of research and reference images to get things correct. Those little breaks, just fill them. We'll do some more of this scallopy mark to echo the texture of the feathers. Going over the top of the doily there. And this is just to make sure that there isn't a great big ugly stop where the doily stopped. Can't have a bird that looks half naked now, can we? This is his leg, and again some little scallopy squiggly marks and some more squiggles and a claw on the end for those feet. If you practice this, you're so going to win the cake decorating section at the next show locally. More scallops. If you're doing a branch like this and it's in sections, probably good if you make sure you repeat the same texture on all the different areas of the branch. Better get his tail happening. The tail will be discrete from the background. It'll be a different colour than the background immediately around it. So that's where it becomes important that your dam walls are good. And I just want blobs here for these unopened buds. So I'm pushing the bag quite down. Looks a little bit Mr. Whippy, but it'll give us some nice rows of buds. Flowers are very often quite symmetrical in their structure, and those are the sorts of things you have to notice and reproduce. Nature's not really as random as we tend to think it is. That's going to look great. Now this branch doesn't much matter if it's a bit wiggly, because branches are. So I'll repeat these lines a little bit. It's almost scribbling in a fairly controlled fashion. And the mid veins and the edges of leaves can be stronger. And now I'll just fill up this whole area with smaller leaves that I'll pipe. So the edge of the leaf and then the mid vein. The little ones don't get a mid vein. We're just trying to make areas where colour can be contained. You don't have to be totally precise. I haven't even got a drawing here that I'm following. I'm just making it up as I go along. They're leaves. Who's going to ever say to you, well, that leaf's in the wrong position? Just do it. Trust your artistic instincts. Now, best if I fill the rest of this bottle brush. Make sure that you do your lines in little groups rather than evenly filling any one area. Let them have little clusters of things. It means you're giving the ink some nice places to sit in between the clusters. See those bobbles that you can get on the end? So if you give it a good squeeze at the start of the line and then flick the bag upwards, you'll start to talk about those little bits of pollen on the ends of the parts of the flowers. Let some of these little lines go on top of the yarn that I glued down earlier too. So many bottle brushes. Did I mention this is a bit tedious? We're nearly there though. This is a very full canvas. And that looks like pretty much enough, I think. Okay, here we are back with our now dried, beautiful textured piece. You saw me do lots of things with the doily on this bird, this fringing that I made out of wool and glued down there, and some leaves that I made out of muslin. You also saw me pipe some extension onto this, because what we're trying to do is create dam walls. We're trying to restrict and direct the flow of ink once we get ink onto it in the future. So I've been quite careful to make sure that some of the shapes are enclosed, where I want ink to just stay where I put it as much as it's going to. So let's talk about what else I've done here. There's some more pieces of doily glued down here, and another shape that's a gum blossom, which is just another piece of that fringing that I made earlier. I've made the second bird, again with a piece of doily made by Marcia in 1967. And I've continued that with some marks here so that we don't just have an area of texture that then ends suddenly. It extends above and extends below with a similar kind of mark making. There's another Banksia flower come in here, and this doily here is the same as the one I cut up down here. It's important always to try and echo your textures. You're always looking for ways to unify a painting. So there it is. Very, very dry. You might need to wait sometimes 3 days for things like that to dry, but they need to be good and dry before you go on, because the next step is a good solid sealing coat of gesso, and that's what we're going to do now. You will be needing some gesso for this. The reason we're going to do it is because right now there's a whole lot of surfaces that have glue on them and a whole lot of surfaces that don't. And they will repel the ink in varying degrees. We want to create an evenly absorbent surface over the top of this. So gesso is the right thing to use. You'll see by the end of this that it doesn't matter what colour any of this, it's all going to be white after this step. Now, as a general rule, don't ever put a brush into your tub of gesso, because it might introduce some bacteria and the whole thing will go rotten. You think rotten potatoes smell bad? Honestly, gesso is so much worse and so much more colourful as well. So really stiff house painting brush, because what you have to do is really push the gesso into the surface. You're trying to get rid of all those little bits that might just hold some ink. And what you also need to do when you've coated your surface is come back into all these flat areas, because you need to tidy up your brush strokes so that the brush strokes in your gesso will work for you rather than against you. If it's just all messy and horrible, it just won't work. It will be a distraction from what you're trying to say in your painting. So I've got some pretty serious gessoing to do right now. Best I get on with it. Gessoing, all done. I've tried to make it as even as I can. The gesso will catch on the edges of the things you've glued down, making the gesso thick there, and that will crack as it dries. Don't worry about that, it won't affect your finished product at all. I made sure that at the end I came through with my brush one last time and smoothed out any lumps and bumps and lines that were happening in the flat areas. It will all show up in your finished job, but I think this is done for now. Time for a well-earned rest. I'm going to leave it here, let it dry, and I think it's time for a wine or two.
Yeah, drink.
The gesso's dry. It's looking a little bit polar bear in a snowstorm though. I think it might be time we did something about that. What we have to do is paint all the high points, because everything that's raised will be coming up through the sea of ink that you're going to create pretty soon on this. If you just wanted white lines on everything, then that'd be cool. You could just leave it white. But frankly, it looks a little bit kind of bandagey if you do that. What I do is use the acrylic colour to key me. So to remind me when I'm in the madness of inking, what colour it is that I expected to put in different places. So I'll be looking to my resource photograph, same as I always do, to just give me that information that I need. I'll also be concentrating on building in the warm colours and the light colours, particularly yellow, because yellow is quite fugitive in the ink and it can disappear just like that. So I guess I should show you the brushes that I'm using. This little brush here is to be the bad example, because what you could do is come in really tidily and you could take hours and paint carefully only the high points. But what's on the flat doesn't actually show up very much. So it doesn't matter if you make a bit of a mess there. So as the shirt says, mess is more. We're going to do this the arts tree way. I've got some quinacridone magenta here because I'm wanting to make a nice rosy pink. I like to use these little saucers to mix my paint in because it makes washing up so much easier. You'll need a little bit of water too, because otherwise the paint's a bit sticky. Now this is dry brushing, what you're doing. You don't want to make the paint super sloppy. It doesn't have to fall down into things. You're just trying to hit the high points. So we'll have a light pink down this side of the flower. This is the side that the light is catching more. And then I'll just pick up this pure quinacridone magenta over here for the darker side of the flower. And that's good enough. Now here I've got some Acrylic yellow light. It's a cool yellow. And I'm finding these other doily flowers in the yellow. I'm trying to remind myself of what colour ink I'm planning to put there later on. Because once I start throwing ink, there's not a whole lot of time to think about things. This one's Acrylic Yellow Deep, a much warmer brand of yellow, and I do tend to use both yellows in just about everything. Get a bit of yellow happening on the breasts of the birds. Again, where I can see the colours need to go. This part's a bit slower, so I've actually got time to think about it. Some sap green. You can overstate the colours in this part of it because the ink going over top is going to modify all the rest of all the colours, all the acrylics. And so it doesn't matter if they're a bit overstated. Don't spend a whole bunch of time making precisely the colour you want, because it's only going to be the very, very high points that show up. See all this mess down on the flat here? Probably won't show up. But if it does, we'll just extend those lines a little bit so they've got a soft edge, just in case. Make them work for you, always. The less things that you can leave that are going to trip you up, the better. This is some cadmium orange. If you want bright orange, cad orange is the way to go. The breasts of the lorikeets are red, so I'm painting the orange there that's close enough to remind me that I want to put red ink in there, but the difference is enough to make a little bit of vibration happen between the red ink that will go on and the orange that I'm putting on first. Nice gradations of colour, interesting, beautiful passages of colour, that's what it's all about. It's ink. Probably should do this beak as well. They do have a red beak. So nice to not have to worry about being tidy. This one is cobalt turquoise light. This is a colour I use a lot of because it's just so clean and beautiful. And I'll put out some phthalo blue as well because I want a variety of blues. I'll have a bit of white too, titanium white, because if I use that phthalo blue all by itself, it's so dark it'll dry almost black. And the inks do tend to go dark by themselves. I really want to keep it light and full of vibrant colour right from the start. I can always calm things down later. So dry brush over these feathers. That'll remind me where to put the blue bits. Down into the tail as well. And a different blue, the cobalt turquoise light up on the head of the bird. Now some green. This is sap green with just a little bit of lemon yellow mixed into it as well. Good thing that the ink's going on this to make it beautiful, because it looks a bit like an explosion in a kindergarten right now. If your painting isn't looking pretty awful at this point, you're probably being too controlled. I'm not too sure about all this sap green being more or less the same colour. That's better. Bit of cobalt turquoise light in there as well, just to manipulate the greens and make it more interesting. Now this bud can't stay white. It's supposed to be related to the other flowers, the bottle brush flowers, although you could do any flower that you wanted, of course. I'm in Australia. You might not be. I'll make these lines nice and fluffy so that if they do show up, they're going to look like little wafty bits of, I don't know, they're not petals. I don't know what to call them. Little wafty bits of flower, I suppose. And I'll get this dark magenta right down the shaded side of the flower. And this one too. Now I'll pick up some white into that to get the lighter side of the flower. You all know painting's all about light, right? More quinacridone magenta. This is really dark now. It's not that critical. The colours you choose are just to give you an idea, but most of the colour will come from your ink. Only a tiny bit of this will show through. Better give this poor bird some colour around its eye. Now that pink brush can go into the acrylamide yellow deep, and that'll give me some orange. And I might just use that for all the rest of these flowers. Now a bit of raw sienna for the branch. Can't forget that, that'd look awful. We have yet more goo to play with now. We're going to be using impasto gel medium, which is almost the same as texture paste, except that it dries shiny, and so I know that it will repel ink. I want that because I want these to be just little pops of really clean colour in there. So I have again our highly technical tool, the sandwich bag. And I'll put some impasto gel medium in there. This time I need to colour it, so I'll just use some acrylic paint to colour it. There's about, I would say, a good heaped tablespoon of impasto gel medium in that bag, and to colour that we'll need about maybe 1.5 inches or maybe 4 centimetres of paint out of the tube. If you don't colour it, it's just going to dry clear, which is kind of not really the idea. So make sure the bag is sealed, because then you need to mush it. You could mix it outside the bag and put it in there already coloured. But you know, I'm a great one for avoiding the dishes at every opportunity. So then once again, we'll twist that bag and make a teeny tiny hole in it. So now these lines are going to be all about just providing some emphasis. I said before that yellow in the ink is a really fugitive colour, it disappears. So I'm adding some yellow here to make sure that I get that brightness and the optimism of yellow popping through where I want it. So I'm going to be putting some on the light side of the flowers. I'll be using it to emphasise some of the tail feathers of the lorikeets, and especially because when I was painting I noticed a couple little breaks in those down walls and I want to make sure I get those fixed up. It's just to add a little bit more movement and excitement to things. So I better get busy, I've still got lots of piping to do. You'll be needing to move fast and squiggle. Let them be in clusters so that you get that variety happening in your line. You don't want to be too predictable. The fineness of this line is important too. If you do this really chunky, it's going to look pretty clunky and horrible. You can go all the way around some flowers if you wanted to indicate pollen all around the outside. Now these feathers, I'm going to move really fast. I want to get the idea that the bird might be moving and creating that blurred motion. Doesn't matter at all that some of these have some strange squiggles in them. Now I'll find the light on the side of this flower, same as I did with the other one. Move fast and squiggle. If you do something you don't like, just scrape it off with a palette knife. I'll have a bit of movement in this tail as well. Nice loose marks. Better do this flower as well or it's going to look strange. It'll be the only one without light caught on that side of it. See how I'm letting the marks be deeper over on the side that's catching the most light? Now we'll fill these centres with impasto gel medium. It'll stop them filling up with ink and it'll give us a nice bright blot of yellow in the middle of everything else. Fill it right up. Okay, you are done for a few hours at least. This all needs to be dry. You can hurry it up with a hairdryer or a heat gun, but if you boil that stuff and make it bubble, it's going to be way ugly. So just, I don't know, put it aside. Put it out in the sun if you like to dry a bit quicker. Go and do your dishes. It's all right. I mean the paint dishes, not the food ones. They can wait. They can always wait. This is art. I'll be back because we're going to be throwing some ink on this really soon. This is when you need to be bringing your brave self to the focus. Let's do it. Guess what? It's time for inking. Finally, we've done all the tedious hard stuff. It's time for inking. It's time for inking. It's time for inking. Sorry, a little bit of a zen moment here. Okay, did I mention it's time for inking? You will need to have a spray bottle. You will need to have some saucers, white ones, because that way you'll see the colours that you're getting in the ink while they're sitting in their saucers. If you have pink roses on there, it can be just so distracting. We'll need some syringes. We'll need some of these curious little chunks of wood that come with canvases. Bet you never really knew what to use those for, but after today you will. We're going to need our Art Spectrum inks. Now, I've used Art Spectrum right from the start. Before you send me that email that asks me what's going to happen if you use a different brand, I don't know. Please, go ahead, do it yourself. Send me an email, let me know what happened, but I don't know what will happen. I love Art Spectrum. They come in two kinds, essentially. This bigger bottle is Art Spectrum pigmented ink. The smaller bottle is Art Spectrum liquid spectrum ink. I use them both. They're all great. The big ones are a little bit cheaper. The little ones come in a wider range of colours. There's lots of colours. You can have fun with this. We'll need something to prop the canvas with from underneath as well. I've found that one of these little teeny canvases does a great job. That's about it. That's the stuff. Don't forget you'll need some Art Spectrum extender as well. It's just part of the liquid spectrum range. Oh, I'm so excited I can hardly think. I think it's time we got busy with this, huh? Okay. Okay, here's the rule. You have a bottle of ink, you make sure the lid's done up, you give it a shake because they have sediment in them. Then you take the lid off and you make sure that that little stopper there isn't caught up inside this tricky little lid here, because if it is, you'll tip the bottle up and you'll have ink everywhere, even more than you're likely to have ink everywhere in this doing it in the first place. So I'm going to mix a couple of shades of blue and I'm going to mix them on a base of white ink because I want the opacity of that. The other trick is you put the lid back on each time. Never have multiple lids off at once, because if you put a purple lid on a whole bottle of yellow ink, you'll just ruin it. This is phthalo blue, and just a few drops in there. And the syringe does a pretty good job of mixing it. So we'll have that one. This is the ultramarine blue, which is quite a different colour. It's a much warmer blue. Now my Lorikeets have got some red in them, and I'll need to mix some down with the extender, because if I mix it with white it's just going to go pink, and I don't actually want any pink Lorikeets. Red's a really strong colour, and if I used it just straight out of the bottle it would overpower everything, and man, we'd have a bloodbath. Never the right answer. Orange is okay, just straight out of the bottle. I've got a couple of greens, so I've got phthalo green and one that I mixed myself out of yellow with just a few drops of turquoise in there. So I'm looking back at my reference photo all the time to get the colours that I want. I'm thinking that's probably close to what I need. So I've got background. Haven't really got anything much for the flowers yet. So I might make two pinks, and I'll mix one of them on white and one of them on extender. Now you can see straight away how different those are. They'll give me really different results. And a syringe for this one as well. And I do believe that'll sort me out. I best get these out of my way though. Okay, this needs to be flat on the table. If I can just apologise right now for the fact that I've been working upside down for you and right way up for me all this time, it's all right. You'll get to see it at the end. You know, I'm good, but I'm not God. Even I can't work upside down. Now, this little canvas has its job to do. It'll sit in underneath here and it will support it from underneath so that the weight of all the ink and texture paste under here doesn't make it all sag in the middle. I've chosen to put it there because that's one of the faces of the bird. Generally, you put it somewhere that's important. You want the ink to be running slightly away from there, not just pooling in a big quagmire in the middle. We need to make sure it's level as well. And these little guys are really useful if you've got any of this kind of wobble in the canvas, because you want everything to be as still as it can be and as flat as it can be for this next step. Bring on the inking. Okay, now we've got ink. We're going to throw it at a canvas. It doesn't get better than this. So first, white. It needs to go pretty much everywhere. You just tremble it out. You're trying to not make lines, just dots, and you're aiming for about 20% or so coverage across the whole canvas, even where there's going to be dark bits, everywhere. Sometimes the sediment might clog up the nozzle of the bottle a little bit and you just have to push it back. Make sure you don't do that thing where you avoid the edges because you don't want to make a mess. This is a performance piece, guys. There is going to be ink everywhere. Okay, that looks about right. Now, being guided by my reference image that I started with, I know I want some blue sky back there. So I'll use the syringes to add in the blue that I watered down with, well, I didn't water it down, did I? I diluted it with white. I pasteurised it with white. I don't know. What's the word? You tell me. Now, some of this blue I think should go into the heads of the birds too, and a little into their tummies. So that was the phthalo blue. Now I've got the ultramarine, and I'll get a bit of this going on in there too. It really isn't that critical where you put the ink at this point because it's not actually going to stay there. Have I scared you yet? So I like to start with the light colours first because it helps me make sure that I don't overpower everything with dark colours. So now some yellow. Now yellow is fugitive, it disappears quickly. So I'm going to be pretty heavy-handed with yellow. Don't worry about the spare bits of ink that go all over the place. It'll be fine. Maybe just a little into some of this greenery. Now I'll have some of the pink that I mixed down with white, and it can go onto the lighter side of those flowers. And it might go on there too. And then the other pink, this is the one that I mixed down with Extender, on the dark side of the flowers. And I might just drop a little bit in here too. Oh, little bit on that top flower. So I'm thinking it's looking appalling right now, which is exactly what it should look like. Now some extender. Now I shook that bottle just then to remind you and me to not shake the extender. It goes foamy. Well, it doesn't matter in this case because the bottle's nearly full, but as you get down in your bottle it will matter. So don't shake the extender. So the extender's gone on. That maybe should be last, but I forgot the green. It's not critical, so long as you get on the colours you want. And you don't overburden it. You really don't want the whole lot to run off the edges and end up on the floor. Okay, that's enough for the moment. I'll be putting more ink on in a wee while. So now the water spray. The trick is you have to spray it brutally enough to disturb the white ink. It's heavy and it doesn't want to move. Particularly on a hot day, you'll find that some of those little blobs of ink have started to dry already around their edges. So we don't want that. So what you do is come in, now the whole surface is nice and wet and it's all pretty pale, so this is good. Now I'm going to get busy. I've got some turquoise ink here and there's some dry bits I don't want in there. So the turquoise can come in here, into the bodies and into the heads of the birds. And we might just have a couple of drops through the sky as well. I've got some phthalo green here, which will give me some nice variation in the greens of the bush. I'm trying to keep it out of the flowers fairly well. Starting to move. I'll have some of this red that we mixed down with extender before. It can go all in here. A bit in their tails as well. I might have some on those flowers, I think. Now, I think right now is probably a good time to step back. 10 minutes of leave it alone. 10. 10, not 10 seconds, 10 minutes. Look at the clock, time yourself, leave it alone for 10 minutes because it's going to look really different when we get back to it to do some more adjustments. Okay? 10, I'm watching. I'm watching, I mean it, 10 minutes. I'm pretty excited about some of the things that have happened here. It's got some lovely colours have developed. One of those things is there's a beautiful purple has just come up all by itself in here. I'm liking it so much that I think I'll actually mix a little more purple to go with it. I can mix that on top of the ultramarine blue that I had last time because the colours are pretty similar. So I'll just drop a little bit of purple in on top. Purple's another one of those very strong colours, so be cautious with it. So, might have just a little of this here. Don't want to put it on top of yellow, that would make mud. Didn't make enough, did I? Okay, that's enough of that. Now I'm loving the orange that's developed over this side, so I think I'll give it a bit more orange ink. It's a little dry on the edges where I didn't follow my own best advice and get the ink all the way out there. Something you can do too is just use your finger to pull the ink out there all the way to the edge so that you get the whole canvas working in your painting. I'm liking the way the colour comes down through here, but I think to balance that orange, I might just drop in a little bit down here as well. Now this is the magenta that I mixed with Extender before. I'm finding this a bit white and yucky looking, so it can have some more pink on top. And I think the same with this one too. Now see, there's a couple of places here where the red ink has not covered the white. So I'll just use this highly technical tool and sort those out as well. A couple in here. You'll find that where the doily is glued down onto the surface, it restricts the flow of ink a little bit, so you have better control there than you do in these open areas, where this has just decided all by itself what it was doing. I'm pretty happy with the decisions it made. This tail here is looking a little bit see-through in places, so a little bit more yellow ink in there. See where all that dark has flooded into the beak there? I can use a syringe and get rid of that. And then I can replace it with some new ink. Now here, I think I'd like a little bit more lime green. This is the bit where you have to decide how much you're going to fiddle and how much you're going to keep leaving it alone. It will still be moving in another hour's time, but it should have slowed down quite a lot by then. Let me warn you though, you can kill them pretty easily with too much love and attention. Now, apart from that edge there and here, pretty happy really, it's still a little bit see-through there, so I might just try, not the phthalo blue, I think I'll go for the turquoise. And just get a little bit more blue happening along that edge and down into the tail. And the same thing over here. And I do believe that now I'm going to follow my own advice and leave it alone. It's going to be a little bit different by the time I get back to it, but hey, that's what it's all about. But you know how I just said I'll leave it alone? I can't, not yet. One more thing. Now, will somebody slap me, please? Make me leave it alone? I'm going. I'm leaving the room, all right? I'm leaving. This is good advice. You should do it too. My ink has dried. I don't know how happy I am about some of the things that have happened, but I'm overall happy, and there are things that I can do to manipulate what's gone on. There's a couple of places that maybe I might like to remove some ink, and there's definitely some places that I'll need to add some more ink on. We'll be using the extender as a glaze to add ink on, and we'll be using a wonderful product called Cleaner, because it cleans things, to take some ink off where we don't need it to be. There's a fair bit of work to do, but it's great. I always think this part is a little bit like dancing with the painting. It's a push and a pull to get it happening exactly how I would like it, because after all, it's my painting, so I am the law in this particular case. I think we should get on with that. Like so much of what I do with inking, you'll need to have your canvas flat on the table for this, and you won't be able to pick it up until it's completely dry. It won't take so long this time though, so that's okay. This wonderful product here is Art Spectrum Cleaner, and it will dissolve anything you need it to dissolve, particularly if it's Art Spectrum inks. Works a treat, wouldn't be without it. So to use it, all we need to do, an area like this that has too much colour on it, what I'm going to do is just carefully drop in just a little bit of cleaner. And then I think over here, it's a little too messy to suit me. I'm just not happy with all that really dark green in there. So drop the cleaner in and then work it with a brush. And you can see already it's dissolving that colour. I don't like this bit because it's like a big green arrow pointing down between the birds. So the cleaner's doing its magic, work it a little bit with the brush, and then all you do is get a wet rag from your ever-present trusty bucket of water and dab that up. See how it's removed the colour? It's important that you rinse the rag because you don't want to leave cleaner sitting on there for too long. It'll eat right down into your initial paint layers. And that's never the right answer. We don't want to go all the way down to bare canvas. You can use the cleaner to get rid of any ink that's not working for you. If the whole thing's not working for you, you can put cleaner over the whole thing, let it sit, work it with a brush, and then take it outside and hose it. All of the ink will come off and leave your textures behind. Little word of warning, you see how similar this cleaner bottle is to this extender bottle? I keep mine at opposite ends of my studio because there was a moment where I put cleaner down and I thought it was extender. And I know before in this video I've tried to be the cautionary tale. I'm good at that, I'm telling you. Opposite ends of the studio, very good plan. what we're doing now is a form of glazing, adding extender. So we have some extender, which is essentially just ink with no pigment in it, and we're going to use that to mix some colours to work with. So I'm looking at what I've got here, and I think perhaps what I need most is to unify the greens a little bit more. So I might grab some of this phthalo green and make a glaze by putting some ink into the extender. You want maybe 3 parts extender to 1 part ink, but it does depend how strong you need the colour to be. So what I can do here is wherever things are looking a little bit starved, I can just add some ink over the top. Anywhere that's particularly white, I might add some more colour. And you'll notice as you're doing it that whatever colour is underneath where you are will really affect whatever you get over the top. You're working transparently, and that's the beauty of ink. The colours are transparent, so you can play around with this. You're not limited to only doing 1 layer. You can do this kind of thing as much as you want to, so long as you let it dry in between times. So I'm trying to think about adding some visual weight down at the bottom of the painting. I'm trying to think about unifying it. I'm trying to correct things like, for instance, if I have an orange leaf, well, maybe that's not so hard because leaves do go orange sometimes, but maybe if I had a pink leaf, well, hang on, new leaves are pink sometimes too. Oh look, you get the general drift. If there's things you need to change, you need to change them. So be bold, be brave. If you lay on some colour and you don't like it, if you're fast, you can get it off again with a damp rag. If it's sat there for a minute or 2, you maybe don't want to do that because it'll dissolve the ink from underneath and take it with it. So there's a bit of phthalo green has gone on there. You're not limited to just using 1 colour, of course. And sometimes, for instance with yellow, I don't actually want to add any extender to my yellow because the colour's quite fugitive and it'll disappear quickly. But I do want this part of the bird to have some more yellow happening in it. So what I can do is just drop some ink in there straight out of the bottle. Ink will only move around if it has a body of fluid to move into. So if there's water or extender on there, it might go places, but otherwise it's going to stay where you put it. However, here I'd like that yellow to move down to the ends of the feathers that I've put it in. So I'll just give it just a little bit of water and it'll start running around again and develop that lovely fluidity that is the hallmark of ink paintings. It's your painting, you're the boss. Perhaps some purple might be good. I'm fairly convinced that there's no such thing as too much purple in the world as a general rule. Purple's a strong colour though, so maybe only 10 or 15 drops of purple in your bit of extender. And I can use this to create some shadows. So if I'm thinking about the light coming from this direction, that might encourage me to look again and realise I've made the light come from this direction. So this would be the shadow side of the flowers. So I'll come in here and really increase the shadow on that side. And on this one. Don't be too worried about colours running places that perhaps you didn't intend them to go. It's okay. This is all about loosening up and letting the colour just be beautiful for you. Don't think you've got to be the boss. Well, you're the boss, but the ink's the bigger boss. In fact, you're not the boss. Give up control. Give up all hope right now. This is inking. I'm sorry, you're not in control. So it's starting to unify quite nicely now with these layers of glaze on the top. I'm thinking this area here is a little empty down the bottom, so I might just purple that whole area up. If I do purple over top of yellow, of course they're opposite from each other on the colour wheel, they're complementary contrasts, I'm going to get some interesting neutrals developing. And you do need neutrals to have a successful painting. You can't just have bright, bright, bright. This beak has ended up way too dark, so what I might do is drop a little bit more ink into it. They do have a yellow tip on their beak. And then I'll drop the red in, now that the yellow's there, to hopefully stop it going too far where I don't want it. And then, of course, I'll clean up all the mess I made, putting ink where I didn't want it. You can always break the surface tension, because surface tension stops sometimes the ink going where you want it. Just get in there with your finger or a little brush and sort it out. I might just drop a bit of red ink into those eyes too. There's nothing worse than a blind lorikeet. I'm going to need some acrylic paint to finish this off. So I have a little bit of Payne's Grey there. It's okay to put acrylic paint straight on over the ink, it's not a problem. But I might use the wrong end of my paintbrush to just come in here and place the pupil. One's a little bit small, I'll make it a bit bigger. And then I need just a tiny touch of titanium white to put a bit of gloss on that eyeball, because living things have glossy eyes. If you don't make them shine, you'll have dead lorikeets. And I'm not best pleased about their bottom beaks because I've rather forgotten about them in this process. So a little bit of Acrylic Yellow Deep. And I'll just paint that in there to give the beaks their ends. This is still a little bit wet, so I just need to put my arm down to balance on so that I can have a steady hand in there. Pretty sure I'm happy with that. The painting is done. We have a finished ink painting. I hope that when you do it, you have some exciting stuff went on in your painting too. This style of inking, we used some dam walls and we used opaque ink. There's another way of doing it too that involves the use of transparent inks, and it's covered in another one of the series. There's a whole lot of things in there that we didn't deal with. There's spatter, there's textures done with knives, there's building up tonal areas of colour before you throw the ink on there and allow it to wander through and do whatever it is it wants to. It's an exciting way to paint, and I hope you're as excited about it as I am. And I hope that you go out now and get yourself some inks and have immense fun. I want to see what beauty you can put into the world. It's a wonderful place, and you, the artist, can make it better.